So, me, who am I? The person who forgot to start the broadcast, but I'm also the product marketing specialist here at HR for Health, which is a really fancy way to say that I run our social media, our webinars. I help put together some presentations. I help with our emails. So, that little invite that you saw in your email inbox this morning was from me. And I love to create chaos and problems. Clearly, that started with this webinar today and not hitting start broadcast. I'm so sorry, and I'm gonna stop apologizing throughout the remainder of this. So I just want you to enjoy it. But I also have a passion for HR and making customer lives easier and compliant. And it doesn't have to give you a headache, and you can also enjoy it, but do it in a really simple way with HR for Health software. You can also have my email. I do respond. So if there's anything in this presentation, or if you want to make fun of me for the fact that I did not start this and was talking to myself for 10 minutes, you're welcome to email me about it. Or if you have feedback on our social media or anything that I'm putting on our stuff, you can also tell me that too. So I think of HR as working in a daycare sometimes. And I say that not to belittle anyone. I say that because when you're working with adults and you're working in whether it be your healthcare setting or any other setting, common sense isn't common, right? We've seen that sometimes when employees are showing up late or employees are not being kind to one another. You wouldn't send your child, anyone's child, let's say you don't have children, I don't have children, I wouldn't send a child to their school without their lunch. I wouldn't send them not prepared. I wouldn't send them without their nutrition so they can function the best that they can each day. And I also would really want the teacher in their classroom to set up some rules and some guidelines and expectations so that way they can act right throughout the day. So that way they're not fighting and biting each other. The same kind of applies to HR and working in any sort of setting, but I think it's even more important in a healthcare, dental, you name it setting. Making rules really cool is kind of what you can do with HR. That's what I believe HR can be. I think that it keeps people in line and you're spending most of your life at your job, right? So you want the workplace environment to be great, you want it to be efficient, and you want it to be productive. So change can be scary when you're trying to move platforms or processes or telling an employee to start using a software. And it's not just about happy employees. It's also about you as a manager, if you're a manager on this call, and wanting to make your life and the lives of others really easy. So with that, here is the agenda for today that you probably saw. We're going to talk about timekeeping, signing documents electronically, performance reviews, how to motivate your team to use the software. And then at the end, we're going to have a Q&A session and conclusion. So if you have any questions that come up throughout today's webinar, please send them in the chat. If you're like me and have the attention span of a flea, sometimes I'll forget what I am thinking about or the question that I want to ask if I wait till the end. So you can send them and I'll look at them at the very end. So please feel free and feel inclined to do so. I will also note that throughout this presentation, I am not going to switch screens back and forth between the software and the presentation. I did that intentionally because I want you to be able to have a full view of what we offer. So I put screenshots inside of our software and the actual steps that I'm taking. One, for current clients, so that way you can use this as your little roadmap when you're having to navigate certain features in our software. And then for future clients, this is also a great guide. Once I send you this presentation, you can bring it to your team, whoever your decision makers are for wanting to get this software. It'll all be laid out for you so that way you don't have to reference or show them a video or anything like that. Level 1, we're going to start with timekeeping, timesheets, and time off requests. Why do we care so much about timekeeping? Why do we talk about it all the time? Why is it something if you're a current client? Why are we urging you to use this feature? every single day. And it's a lot more than just clocking in and clocking out. Timekeeping tells you about what's going on every day. It tells you about your staff, if they're showing up on time. It contributes to revenue, your legal compliance, and employee management. This is one of those things where when you put in the effort and you make sure to do it regularly and you stay on top of it, it's one of those one of those pieces of compliance that you can avoid a lawsuit over when it comes to wage and hour claims. And I won't spend this presentation going over the legal aspect, but that's why we want to talk about it and why it's so important. And so when it comes to our software and what we've thought about, it's not just simply clocking in and out each day. We've thought about, this is a checklist from SHRM, the Society of Human Resource Management, who's compiled this based on legal and employment laws. These are all the things that you have to consider when putting your time clock together. And this can't happen if you're doing it on a piece of paper or you're texting or not using an HR software. I'll show you how each of these pieces, not each of them, but how most of them have been considered. I'll show you parts of it, not through every single checklist. I'll show it to you so that way you can see how we've considered compliance in our timekeeping practices and how this makes your life a lot easier instead of having to do it on your own. So the solution, which, spoiler, we have it for you. I'm not going to tell you all of your problems and then not give you a solution. It's a lot easier than you think it might be. And that is, with an HR software, we don't just give you the technology, we also have HR advisors. So you can email, call them whenever something comes up that is specific to you and your practice. We give you recommendations within the software as well. So we'll tell you, let's say a new law comes up in regards to timekeeping. We'll say, hey, based on this healthcare practice, we think you should or shouldn't do this, or you should and you have to do this, and this is how you can implement it. And then our employee handbooks update on their own, which we'll get to because that's not timekeeping yet. So first things first, what happens even before someone clocks in? Well, there's a rule book for adults, and that is called the employee handbook. You see us all over our marketing. We have an employee handbook generator. We talk about an employee handbook update checklist, all of it. Why do we talk about employee handbooks all the time? Because the first thing that one of the first things that an employee sees when they start with you is that employee handbook, and that is their rules, regulations, policies, procedures that they need to read through and acknowledge that they've read to you to say, I understand my expectations, the rules I need to follow, why I'm following them. And by signing, I'm telling you that I understand and I'm going to follow these. So before an employee even clocks in, they're going to review this and know what those policies and procedures are. It starts here, and this is a little glimpse into our software of what that looks like. It's all digital. So we'll have the employees sign the handbook through here. You'll be notified that they did. So you won't have an employee come up to you later and say, well, I didn't know about this, or you didn't tell me. It was in the handbook. That's why handbooks are so important, because it's all in one place. And with HR for Health, you can go back into the software anytime you want to and look through that handbook. So there's really no excuse of, well, I couldn't find it. It didn't say that. You're covered here. Now, they read the employee handbook. They know all the rules and policies. They're getting started with their job. Now they're going to clock in. So at the top of this slide, you can see one option where employees can clock in, and then that's at the little bar at the top. And that drop down would be a different location if you have multiple locations. It's that simple. You don't have to click on anything once you log into the software. It's right there at the very top. It's super easy to clock in. So with this clocking in feature, we have a time clock authorization, which means that the employee has different, kind of like settings within the timekeeping feature. So that means you can pick where they're able to clock in. Yes, we can see their location, but not in a super creepy way. It's based off their IP address. We can see where that employee is, and we want to make sure that they're clocking in where they say that they're clocked in at. There are thresholds, so what you consider to be early or late. This can also work for remote employees as well. So this ensures that your employee, me, let's say I'm clocking in, we're making sure that I am at the practice and I'm ready to work when I clock in. So that means, let's say I wanted to go to Starbucks before work today. And I decided, and I get through the drive through and it's 8 o'clock and I'm like, oh, I need to clock in from my phone. Can't do that if I'm not in an authorized location to do so. So I can't fake it. You'll know, and it won't let me clock in. So from the manager side, let's say an employee is late. They will be notified on their end as an employee, and it'll say you're marked as tardy. Please tell me why you're tardy. And for me, I didn't have a really good excuse. I put because I can be. This authorization is done from the manager side. So that means you will see why they were late, what happened. You can write a note, which the note is there because it's really helpful whenever you want to review employees' files and see this is maybe make a note of they showed up at this time, this is why they were late. Maybe you notice something about the behavior of an employee when they came in and you want to make a note of it. This would be a really good place to do that. And then you can excuse or not excuse that tardy. But that's from the manager standpoint. As an employee, I'm responsible for making sure that I put in a note as to why I was late. So next part, from the manager's side, right? So as an employee, I wouldn't see this, but from a manager standpoint, you would be able to update the settings based off of what you think is best for your practice. So you can choose if you want an employee to clock in or clock out from their mobile device. We can tell that based on how they're browsing the software. I will go into timesheets right after this, but you can set whether or not you want them to add and edit their timesheets. We recommend that you allow them to edit them because they should be the ones to edit their timesheets, not you. So that way you can stay out of compliance or legal trouble. All of these settings, which can seem a little intimidating, especially some of the lingo just doesn't make sense. But when you come in and you start to set up your software, we recommend what policies and what would work best for your specific practice. So if you have questions, that's exactly what we're here for, and we can help you set that up in your end of the software. So for manual timesheets, let's say as an employee, I forgot to clock in or I forgot to add the hours that I was working. We have timesheets. So that way it's on the employee to do it themselves, to put it in the software. So you don't have to do that. And then when I am making my entry for that, so I put the time in, time out, the dates, which location, and some comments. So I'm going to make a comment as to why I'm adding this in manually. And then it will go to the manager side for approvals. And it will also show you in this timesheet, I think it's the next one. Yes. So from the manager perspective, this is super helpful because now you'll see this can be a full audit trail from an employee. So remember, when I clocked in just using the software or from my phone, whatever it might be, I am able to see when that employee clocked in. I'm able to see where, how, what was going on. That's all coming in from the clocking in and clocking out. But if they're doing it manually, what happens? This is what happens. So it tells me where this employee entered their timesheet to show and make sure that we know that this IP address is connected to this employee. It's telling me what time they entered this in. It's telling me the comments that they made, how many hours they're putting down. All of this leaves an electronic paper trail. So that way you're covered in every way, shape, or form, and it shows you when, how, where, why they're all putting this in. So you'll have this information and you're covered. If anything seems to come up with an employee or you need to look through their timesheets, it's all here for you. Next, it's 5 o'clock somewhere. Oh, you didn't put it in your handbook. So if your employee is asking for time off, this is what it'll look like on their end. They will select a reason. They will pick which time bank they're going to pull it from. the date, blah, 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 all this fun stuff. So this is how easy it is for an employee to request time off. And why this is really crucial and why this is really helpful is because then on your end, you're really transparent. You know when your employee is going to be off. It's not them sending you a text message saying, I'm going to be off in a month from now. Hope you remember this. Now you have it in a system and it shows, and they can't come back later and say, well, you didn't offer me paid time off. I'm due this, this, and this. It's all logged here in a software. So that way you know and you have proof that either the time off was given, it's logged, and it's here. All time off requests they have submitted and the status of those requests will show up on the manager's end. And this allows the last part, you can plan a lot better. So you can effectively plan out when they want to take a vacation. So you can plan based on each employee when it's going to work. And it's up to you as the manager to approve or deny those requests. So this is what it'll look like on your end for those resolutions. So you'll see here for each employee, you can see the status, how much they're requesting, and then the actions to take on the side. So at the end of the employee's time off cycle, whether the time off banks, it's an anniversary or based on the calendar year, our software will alert you when it's time to resolve that unused time off hours. And you, as an authorized user, if you're a manager, will receive an alert and email letting you know that your employee has some unused time off that needs to be resolved. So you're then able to manage the time off by either rolling over those hours, unless they've opted for auto rollover, which you can also do in our software. You can pay out the hours, forfeit the hours, and all of these things ensure that you're being compliant and the employee's getting what they want, and you're also getting what you want, which is compliance and organization. This makes your life a lot easier. So now, I know I've been talking forever, but I swear this part's a little bit quicker. So next, let's talk about being digital, onboarding, separation, and more. So here is what the new hire documents will look like. Let's say your employee is just getting started. They don't just have a handbook. There's a lot more than that. So they'll get the handbook and a bunch of other forms that they need to fill out. This typically goes out on the first day of employment, and they should be paid when they are filling out all of this documentation. You should establish a process for the employee signatures and storage, which we do that for you. We keep all of the updated documents in one place. You have a status column, which tells you when and how they signed this document and what they have left to do. So this also helps you when you're trying to keep up with the documents that change, any policies that are changing, and all of this will be in one place for each new hire, which really, really matters because depending on your state, on a federal level, on a local level, these forms can be different. And there's upwards of 23 new hire documents based on where you're located. So having it in one place makes life so much easier. Now, I have drilled in how you should be compliant and why we don't want to get sued. But why should you have an entire software for this? So it saves you time, right? Because you're having an employee do it on their end. You don't have to dig out of the filing cabinet to pick out all of the forms. You don't have to go on Google and search whether or not this form is needed in this state. It saves you a lot of time in that regard. We also keep a audit trail for you. So if anything comes up on a federal or state level, you're compliant. We're showing that this employee with a timestamp, an electronic signature has signed this document. It helps with communication too, because it's all in one place. It's helping you communicate with them like, hey, just go into the software. We have all of your new hire documents together. You can fill it out there. So that way you're not saying fill out this, this, and this document, and maybe they forget it. And then that wouldn't be really helpful. And then the last part is it just keeps you organized. If you're one of those people that has 50 million tabs open on their computer, or your desktop is crazy with a bunch of files on it, HR for Health doesn't ever look like that. We make sure that everything is put together, it's organized all in one place for you. Now, when it comes to the documents, kind of back to what we were talking about, let's say you have an employee You have multiple employees and you're wondering, I wonder if they filled out their W-4 document. Well, we have that for you. We have reports to show you how easy it is with finding that specific document. So you can either filter it by employee or by document. So let's say you're like, oh, I want to see if this, and this employee has filled out this, and this form. Really easy. We put it all in one spot for you. So that way you can filter by that employee or by the document type and find it later to make sure that they have filled out what they need to fill out. Quick, right? Not so bad. New hire documents have never been easier thanks to HR for Health. It's quick, it's simple, it's easy. I wanted to make sure to not go over all the legal stuff, but you can see what goes on from the employee standpoint. Next, performance reviews. If you love them or if you hate them, you still have to do them. So what does that look like for the employee side? On the employees, which when you create those performance reviews, you can choose what types of questions. So take this screenshot with a grain of salt. It doesn't all look like this. This is just this type of question specifically. And so I will review that employee, but they can select and do this performance review on their own. This will give you some insight on how the employee thinks that they're doing, and the employee will fill this out first, and then you will go in and give your answers and give your feedback. You will finish your portion of the review, but it's much better if you do this once they're done. So that way you're not influenced by what the employee has written. Because let's say you have an employee that like you're not really a fan of and they rate themselves as perfect across the board, and then spitefully, it might make you want to rate them a little lower. So it's better to make sure you do it afterwards. So that way you're not being influenced, your bias can be on the side while you're giving them an evaluation based on their work, because you should be as objective as possible. So listen, I know I showed you how easy it is for an employee. They just have to go in and then they fill out their answers and they send it back to you. As a manager, it's still just as easy because we do have templates that you can create. So you can use ones that we have made for you, or let's say you want to create one on your own. You're feeling really fancy. You want to go all out for your performance reviews this year. And maybe you found a really cool article you saw online with some really creative questions that you want to ask them. You can create that template, and then it's easy. You send it to your employees. You can use the same one for all of them. So you don't have to copy and paste. You don't have to switch things out. It will update and edit based on that employee for you, and you can use that template. It'll tell you if it's ready, there's a description, and then it'll remind you of the last time that you updated this. Oh, wait, let me make sure. So for this, we also have notes that you can provide an employee. So let's say you want to create a note about someone outside of a performance review, right? Because there's going to be other times that you are writing down behaviors or skills or performance outside of that. We have a note section in here as well. And then this also ties all into the employee handbook, right? Because performance reviews come from some of those policies that an employee reviewed on their first day of work to make sure that they're still compliant, they're following the policies that you have laid out and that they signed to begin with. So, common thing, change, right? It makes some people really uncomfortable. I'm really uncomfortable with change too. Your team doesn't like it, and obviously you have to act right too. So how do you get them to use the software? Now, back to the analogy of kids in a daycare, you have to tell them what's in it for them. Why is it worth it? Let's say you have kids doing their chores, right? You have to tell them, okay, if you do this for me, I will give you this reward. Remind them, and for you, it makes your daily tasks easier, and clearly communicate this with them. So show how easily they can log their hours, request time off, or access important documents. And emphasize how convenient it is to have all of those things in one place. So if they need to review a time off policy, let's say they want to be spontaneous and book a trip to Vegas at 1 o'clock in the morning, right? And HR for Health, we have that document right there for them so they can look at it and not bother you or try to sift through a bunch of documents to find out what the time off policy is. Tip number 2, we will deal with the training aspect, right? If you're concerned on whether or not your employee is going to figure out this software, we will take care of that for you. So this on the left-hand side is actually what it looks like for us. So when your employee opens up the software, they will see this little guide, this little pop-up that comes up, and they can either launch the guide or look through some FAQs, and we will make sure that they know how to use this. And we have a ton of videos. We have a huge resource library too. You can also reach out to our team and we will help you with any setting or feature that you're struggling to use. And we have step-by-step guides. So there's a lot of resources for an employee to make sure that they are getting the most out of the software. So encourage some feedback, right? You want to make sure that in case they're struggling with something, you don't know until you know, right? So none of us are a mind reader, and sometimes we don't know what they're struggling with the most. And like a lot of teachers might say in classrooms, there's no such thing as a stupid question, because chances are someone else is feeling that exact same thing. So if you tell them to send in, which we have a message feature, spoiler, they can send in a message to you and say, look, I can't figure this out, help me. Make sure to encourage that feedback so that way the employees don't feel kind of stranded and neglected, and they can feel like, okay, I don't understand how to use this, but I want to make your life easier. I just need you to show me how. And then you can also tell that employee, share some success stories from employees who have benefited from this software. And then last tip, it doesn't have to be boring. Make it fun, right? So it sounds really elementary, but in the same way with kids, you kind of want to ignore the behavior that you don't want to keep seeing. You want to reward the behavior that you do want to keep seeing, repeated over and over again, right? You want to have some positive reinforcement. And it sounds kind of elementary, but it's so true. So with your employees, I jokingly put prizes in candy, but if you want to offer them candy, you absolutely can. So you want to incentivize this process for them. So if you are making this transition to the software, or let's say you have our software already and there's a couple employees who aren't logging or doing what they're supposed to in the software, incentivize it. Offer something fun. Give them, gift cards. Say, if you all use the software, or we've seen that you've been using the software for a week or a month straight, and we want to offer you a gift card, here it is. And make sure to be consistent with this. So show them that you are also using this software and you believe in the benefits of this and you believe in the efficiency. They will also want to follow suit with you. And then you can celebrate some milestones or achievements within the team and show how much fun it can really be. So with that, I have talked your ears off for a really long time. I want to leave some room for questions if you have any, and you can send them in the chat. If not, that's also okay. You don't have to have a question right now. We'll have an email at the end to make sure that you can provide any feedback or questions that maybe I missed during the presentation. Does anyone have any? Okay. I see there's none. I will take it that I just explained it so well that you don't have any questions. So that was my presentation for today. That I hope you all don't judge me for messing up at the beginning, but I really love our software. I love how easy it is. And the reason why we pride ourselves on being an HR software specifically for healthcare and dental is, one, we believe that having this software catered to you makes a huge difference in your employee management, for one thing. For two, there's a lot of HR softwares out there, right? The thing with HR for Health is that it makes it so much easier to manage your employees because it is spelled out and we make it and we write it and we create it in a way that's not super complicated, right? We call things for what they are in the software. So you're not wondering, okay, what is this lingo? What does it mean? We're not throwing a bajillion different features and add-ons and updates at you like a lot of these giant software companies do. So that way you're not overwhelmed, right? Because you don't need another thing on top of your stack of to-do list that makes your life a lot harder. We've designed this software specifically for healthcare practices because we've talked with them, we know the industry, and we've designed the software as easy as possible while also keeping you compliant. So if you really liked what we covered today, you can scan this QR code to book a demo with our team. And that's me saying, what is a demo? A demo is you will talk with a member of our team and we can answer those specific questions you have about your practice, your employees, how would the software look for you, how can you get started, right? Because I'm assuming after this, you're going to want to buy our software. So you can talk to a member of our team and have your questions answered. You can also visit our website or you can email us as well. And you can also email me, but I promise after this webinar today, I'm going to send you a copy of this presentation and a link to the recording of this in case you need a reminder or you want to review any of the information that I talked about today. I hope that I answered some of your questions. I hope you're really excited to manage your team and view HR as something that's a little more fun. And also it's really just beneficial to all of you. So I still don't see any questions. I'm hoping that's a good thing. If you have any and you were too scared to send it in the chat, you can follow up with us. And I hope you enjoyed this webinar today. And I look forward to hearing from you all sometime soon. Thank you, everyone.